The mind's most beautiful lie. There is a lie you tell yourself every single day. And the strangest part, you need it to be true. Close your eyes for a moment and think about the person you believe you are. Not the body sitting here listening to these words, but the you beneath that. The one who has opinions, preferences, a history. The one who remembers yesterday and plans for tomorrow. The one who suffers, who hopes, who dreams of becoming something more. That person feels absolutely real, doesn't it? So real that you've built an entire life around protecting it, improving it, defending it. You wake up in its skin. You speak with its voice. You carry its wounds like sacred relics and its victories like crowns. But here's what no one wants to hear. That person, the one you've spent your whole life becoming, is the mind's most beautiful lie. Not because you don't exist, but because the way you think you exist is fiction. Let me take you somewhere quiet. Imagine a river, not the water itself, but the movement of water. You stand on the bank and you say, "There is the river." You point to it. You name it. You remember it. But if you return tomorrow, is it the same river? The water has changed. Every molecule has moved on. The banks have shifted, even slightly. The temperature, the color, the speed, all different. So what is the river really? It's not a thing, it's a pattern, a happening, a temporary flow that the mind freezes into a snapshot and calls river. Now look at yourself. You are not a thing either. You are a pattern, a river of sensations, thoughts, memories, biochemical reactions, electrical impulses in the brain. Every cell in your body replaces itself over time. Every thought arises and dissolves. Every emotion is a passing weather system. And yet the mind does something extraordinary. It takes this flow, this rushing, chaotic, ever-changing river of being, and it freezes it. It creates a character, a protagonist, a continuous I that seems to travel through time, unchanged at its core. This is the lie. But here's the twist. It's a beautiful lie. The Sufis have a teaching. They say the ego is like a candle flame in a dark room. It flickers. It dances. It illuminates just enough for you to see the walls around you. And because of that small circle of light, you believe the room is all there is. You forget the vastness beyond the walls. You forget that the light itself is not solid, it's just burning, consuming itself to exist. The mind builds the self the same way. It stitches together fragments, a name, a face in the mirror, a collection of memories, a set of preferences, and says, "This is who I am." It draws borders around the vastness and says, "Everything inside this line is me. Everything outside is not me." And once that border is drawn, suffering begins. Because now you have something to protect, something to improve, something that can be threatened, insulted, diminished, or lost. The river becomes a dam, and the dam starts to crack. I remember the first time I truly felt this. I was sitting alone after argument, one of those arguments where you replay every word, every expression, trying to figure out who was right and who was wrong. My mind was looping, building a case, defending my version of events. And then, for just a second, I stepped outside of it. I saw the whole performance. The inner lawyer presenting evidence. The inner judge passing verdicts. The story I was telling myself about myself, polished and practiced, and desperate to be believed. And I thought, who is this for? If I'm alone in the room, who am I trying to convince? That's when I realized the self doesn't just exist. It insists. It constantly argues for its own reality, It needs to be seen, validated, remembered. It needs to matter. Because deep down, it knows. It knows it's made of smoke. So here's the beautiful, terrifying truth. You are not the character you've been playing. You are the awareness watching the character. You are not the river. You are the stillness beneath it. But the mind won't let you rest there. Not yet. It will pull you back into the story. It will remind you of your name, your past, your plans, your fears, and that's okay. Because the lie isn't the enemy. The lie is just the mind doing what it was designed to do, create continuity in a world of constant change. Give you a self to navigate with, a mask to meet the world through. The suffering only begins when you forget it's a mask. When you confuse the character for the author, the wave for the ocean, the flame for the light itself. So let's go deeper. Let's look at why the mind creates this lie, what it's protecting you from, and what happens when you finally see through it, not to destroy the self, but to hold it lightly. Like a bird holds the air beneath its wings, not clinging, just flying. If the self is a lie, then why does it feel so true? Why does it ache when it's wounded? Why does it hunger, fear, and dream? Because the mind isn't trying to deceive you. It's trying to save you. Let's go back to the beginning. Not your beginning, the beginning. Before language, before mirrors, before you had a name, you were born without a self. There was sensation, hunger, warmth, light and dark, comfort and discomfort. But there was no I experiencing those things. There was just experiencing, pure, undivided awareness. A baby doesn't think, I am hungry. It simply is hunger. The feeling and the felt are one. But then something happens. The world begins to teach you separation. You hear your name, and you learn to turn your head. You see a reflection, and you learn to recognize that face as yours. You're told what you like and what you don't. What's good behavior and what's bad. Who you should be and who you shouldn't. And slowly, brick by brick, the mind builds a structure. A sense of that's separate from the world, a center. A subject observing objects. This is not a mistake. This is necessary. Without a sense of self, you couldn't navigate the world. You couldn't learn, plan, remember, or survive. The self is the operating system, the user interface between raw awareness and the complexity of life. But here's where it gets tricky. The self, once created, doesn't want to be questioned. It wants to be permanent, solid, real. It starts to defend itself as if its life depends on it. Because, in a way, it does. The Zen masters have a koan. Show me your original face, the face you had before your parents were born. At first, it sounds absurd. How can you have a face before you existed? But that's exactly the point. The face you show the world, the identity, the personality, the story is constructed. It came into being. And anything that comes into being will one day cease to be. The original face is what remains when all the construction falls away. Not a thing, not a person, just presence. The aware space in which all things arise. But the mind resists this, violently sometimes, because to see through the self is to face a kind of death. Not physical death, but ego death. The dissolution of everything you thought you were. And the mind, desperate to survive, will do anything to avoid that moment. It will distract you. It will create drama. It will make you believe your worth depends on achievement, appearance, approval. It will convince you that happiness is just one more success away, one more relationship away, one more answer away. All to keep you from sitting still long enough to ask, who is it that wants to be happy? There's an old Sufi story about a man who spent his whole life searching for a treasure. He traveled the world, climbed mountains, crossed deserts, consulted with mystics and kings. And then, in his final days, he had a dream. In the dream, an angel told him the treasure was buried beneath his own doorstep. He returned home. He dug beneath the threshold, and there it was gold beyond measure. The teaching is simple. What you're searching for is not out there. It's here. It's always been here. But you had to exhaust yourself looking elsewhere before you were ready to see it. The self is the same. You spend your whole life trying to become someone, to build a self that's worthy, complete, enough. You chase credentials, relationships, experiences, insights, all in service of this I that you're polishing and perfecting. But the treasure isn't in becoming, it's in unbecoming, in letting the constructed self loosen its grip, in realizing you were never missing anything in the first place. You were whole before the story began, and yet here's the tension. You can't just abandon the self. You can't pretend it doesn't exist. That's spiritual bypassing another kind of lie. You have bills to pay, relationships to tend, a body that gets hungry and tired, a mind that plans and remembers and worries. The goal isn't to destroy the self. It's to stop being ruled by it, to hold it the way you'd hold a tool. Use it when it's needed. Set it down when it's not. This is what the mystics mean by freedom. Not the absence of self, but the transparency of self, seeing it clearly, knowing it's a construct, and choosing, moment by moment, whether to believe in it or not. Think of it like this. An actor plays a role. They put on the costume. They speak the lines. They feel the emotions. For 2 hours on stage, they become that character. But when the curtain falls, they take off the costume. They go home. They don't carry the character's pain or pride into their real life. The tragedy is when the actor forgets their acting, when they believe the role is who they are, when they carry the character's wounds off the stage and into every relationship, every decision, every quiet moment. You are the actor. The self is the role. And most of us have forgotten we're acting. So what does it mean to remember? It doesn't mean rejecting the role. It means seeing it, recognizing the costume for what it is, feeling the script in your hands and realizing you didn't write this alone. The world wrote parts of it. Your past wrote parts of it. Fear wrote parts of it. But you are not the script. You are the one reading it. And that changes everything. There comes a moment, sometimes sudden, sometimes slow, when the lie can no longer hold. When the self you've built so carefully begins to crack. And you have a choice. Rebuild it stronger. Or let it fall and see what's underneath. Maybe it happens in loss. A relationship ends. A dream dies. Someone you love is gone, and you realize no amount of identity, no achievement or image, can protect you from the raw fact of impermanence. Or maybe it happens in silence. You sit alone, and for once you're not distracting yourself. No phone, no task, no noise. And in that silence, the voice in your head, the one that's been narrating your life, suddenly sounds hollow. You think, who is that? Who is this voice pretending to be me? Or maybe it happens in a moment of clarity. You catch yourself in the mirror and you don't recognize the face. not because it's changed, but because you suddenly see it as just a face. Skin, bone, eyes that look back with no inherent meaning. And beneath the face, there's just space. This is what the mystics call the dark night. Not because it's evil, but because it's the collapse of the known. The structures you built to make sense of life, who you are, what you're worth, what it all means, they dissolve. And you're left standing in the mystery. Let me tell you what happens in that moment, because it's the same for everyone. Terror. The mind panics. Because without the self, what's left? Without the story, who are you? The mind rushes to rebuild, to patch the cracks, to find a new identity, a new mission, a new distraction, because the alternative is too much. The alternative is to sit in the groundlessness and just be, with no label, no role, no direction, to exist without insisting on existence. But if you can stay there even for a breath, something shifts. The terror turns into spaciousness. The absence turns into presence. The loss turns into liberation. You realize, I am not less without the story. I am more. Not more in quantity, more in depth, in openness, in aliveness. The Buddhists talk about emptiness, and people misunderstand. They think it means nihilism. They think it means nothing matters. But emptiness doesn't mean nothing is real. It means nothing is fixed. You are empty of a permanent, unchanging self. But you are full of potential, of flow, of the capacity to be many things, to hold many experiences, without clinging to any single definition. Emptiness is freedom. It's the sky that holds every weather system without becoming the storm. It's the silence that holds every note without becoming the song. You are that. Not the self that changes, but the awareness that remains unchanged as the self rises and falls like waves on the ocean. I'll be honest with you, when I first glimpsed this, it didn't feel like enlightenment. It felt like grief. Because I had spent so much time building a self I could be proud of, overcoming flaws, developing skills, and suddenly I saw it was all optional, like furniture in an empty room, beautiful maybe, useful maybe, but not me. And I thought, if I'm not this, then what have I been doing? It took time to realize that wasn't the right question. The question wasn't, what have I been doing? It was, who is asking? Because even that question, even the grief, the doubt, the search was just another wave, another pattern in the river. The awareness that noticed the grief, that wasn't grieving. It was just watching grief move through. And that awareness was closer to the truth than any answer I could construct. So here's what happens after the collapse. You rebuild, but differently. You put the pieces of the self back together because you have to. You still have a name, a face, a life to live, but now you hold them lightly, like clothes you put on in the morning, knowing you'll take them off at night. You stop defending the story so fiercely. You stop needing everyone to agree with your version of yourself. You stop measuring your worth by the self-successes or failures, because you've seen what's underneath, and it's unbreakable, not because it's strong, because it's not a thing that can break. It's the space in which breaking and mending both occur. Here's something you can try not as a technique, but as an experiment. Sit quietly, just for a moment, and notice the thoughts moving through your mind. Don't judge them. Don't follow them. Just notice. There's a thought about work. There's a thought about what I'll eat later. There's a thought about whether I'm doing this right, and as you notice them, ask yourself, who is noticing? Not rhetorically. Actually feel into it. There's the thought. And there's the awareness of the thought. They're not the same. The thought is content. The awareness is context. The thought is a cloud. The awareness is the sky. You've been identifying with the clouds your whole life, thinking you are the worry, the hope, the memory, the plan. But you're not. You're the sky. And the sky doesn't fight the clouds. It doesn't cling to the sunny days or resist the storms. It just holds them all, spaciously. This is the opening. Not transcendence, not escape, not perfection. Just the simple, radical recognition that you are not in the experience. You are the experiencing itself. The self will keep doing its thing. It will plan and worry and dream. It will get hurt and heal and try again. But now there's space around it. Now there's a witnessing presence that isn't caught in the drama. That can watch the play without forgetting it's a play. And from that space, something new becomes possible. Not a better self, but a life lived from beyond the self. So now you know. The self is a beautiful lie, a necessary fiction, a story the mind tells to navigate the world. The question isn't whether to believe it. The question is, how do you live once you've seen through it? Here's the paradox no one tells you. Seeing through the illusion of self doesn't make life easier. In some ways, it makes it harder. Because now you can't hide behind the story anymore. You can't blame the character. You can't say, "This is just who I am," and use it as an excuse. You have to take responsibility not for being someone, but for choosing who you show up as moment by moment. You have to live with both truths at once. See that the self is empty and that it matters. That it's a construct and that it shapes everything. This is the tightrope, and the only way to walk it is with lightness, with humor, with a kind of gentle, compassionate play. Alan Watts used to say, "The meaning of life is just to be alive." It is so plain and so obvious and so simple, and yet everybody rushes around in a great panic as if it were necessary to achieve something beyond themselves. That panic, that's the self in survival mode. Convinced it has to prove something, earn something, become something more than it already is. But what if you don't? What if you've already arrived, and the whole search was just the mind's way of keeping itself busy? This doesn't mean you stop growing. It doesn't mean you stop trying. It means you stop tying your worth to the outcome. You create, not to become a creator. You love, not to become lovable. You act, not to build a self, but because action arises naturally from presence. You live the lie lightly. Let me give you 3 small invitations. Not rules, not steps. Just experiments in living from the space beyond the self. First, practice the pause. The next time someone criticizes you, or you make a mistake, or you feel that familiar surge of defensiveness, pause. Just for one breath, feel the impulse to defend, to explain, and to correct the story. And before you act on it, ask who is being defended. Not to shame yourself, but to notice, to see the self rushing to the surface, desperate to be right, to be safe, to be seen. And in that pause, you might find you don't need to respond the way you always have. You might find a little more space, a little more choice. Second, hold your opinions loosely. You have preferences, beliefs, values. That's natural, that's human. But notice how tightly you grip them. Notice how much of your identity is wrapped up in being right about them. What if you could hold your opinions the way you hold a cup of tea, present, enjoying it, but knowing that if you set it down, you'd still be whole. This doesn't mean you become passive or indifferent. It means you stop needing to win every argument, prove every point, convert every doubter. You speak your truth, and you leave room for other truths, because the self that needs to be right is just tired. Third, celebrate the performance. The self is a role, so play it well, with joy, with creativity, with full commitment. Show up for your life. Care about things. Love deeply. Work passionately. Get messy. Make mistakes. But at the end of the day, take off the costume. Sit in the quiet. And remember, you are not the role. You are the awareness that made the whole performance possible. Here's what I want you to hear, because it's easy to misunderstand this teaching. Seeing through the self doesn't mean you become some detached, emotionless sage. You still feel. You still care. You still laugh, cry, hope, fear. But now there's a transparency to it. A recognition that these feelings are weather, not identity. They move through you, but they don't define you. You can be heartbroken without believing you're a broken person. You can be joyful without needing the joy to last forever. You can be angry without becoming your anger. This is freedom, not from feeling, but from the tyranny of feeling, from the belief that your emotions are verdicts on your worth. So here we are at the end. But really, we're at the beginning, because this teaching doesn't end. It circles back. Every moment is an opportunity to see it again, the self arising, the story spinning, the lie beautifully concealing the truth. And every moment you have a choice, to believe it completely, to reject it completely, or to hold it lightly like a feather on your palm present, but weightless. The mind's most beautiful lie is that you are someone. A fixed, continuous, separate someone moving through time, trying to get somewhere, trying to become something. The truth is simpler and more mysterious. You are the vastness pretending to be small, the ocean pretending to be a wave, the light pretending to be a shadow. And there's nothing you need to do to change this. It's already true. It's always been true. You just forgot for a while, and forgetting is part of the dance. So don't rush to fix yourself. Don't shame the self for existing. Don't try to transcend your humanness. Just see it, softly, clearly. See the lie for what it is, not an enemy, but a gift. A beautiful, temporary disguise that lets you play, love, create, struggle, and grow. And when you're ready, not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday you'll set the disguise down. Not forever, just for a moment. Long enough to remember what you were before the story began. Long enough to rest in the space that holds all stories, all selves, all seeking. Long enough to breathe. And then, if you choose, you'll pick the disguise back up. You'll walk back into the world. You'll play your part with everything you have. But now, you'll know, you are not the mask. You are the space, and the space is infinite. Thank you for listening. Thank you for questioning. Thank you for being here in all your beautiful, constructed, perfectly imperfect complexity. The mind will keep telling its lies, and that's okay. Just remember you are the one listening, and you've always been free.